Hi, my name is Ronny Allan, an international neuroendocrine cancer patient advocate. I've been asked by Kathy today to talk for a short period about how to become your own expert. And so we'll move straight into that. I always put a disclaimer up. I'm not a doctor or any form of medical professional, practitioner or counsellor. None of the information you'll find in this presentation should be interpreted as medical advice. I start with my patient story. I think it's important for context. I am a neuroendocrine cancer patient. That looks like a very busy slide, but it's been a very busy 10 years. And so I'm just going to give you a couple of bullet points from that. I was diagnosed in 2010 following some weight loss, low hemoglobin, and officially anemia was the initial suspicion. But also in hindsight, I had signs of carcinoid syndrome. And at the time, I clearly didn't know that's what it was, but I did not disclose that to my GP. One thing led to another, and I eventually got a CT, which led to a liver biopsy, and I was formally diagnosed with a grade 2 small intestinal primary with multiple liver metastases, extensive intra-abdominal spread, usual bulky chains of lymph nodes. I had an incidental lung nodule, which isn't really anything to worry about, but I had something called retroperitoneal fibrosis, which my surgeon later described as desmoplasia, which is a result of excess hormones from my tumours. I then, after being formally diagnosed, went to do lots of other tests to confirm staging and tumour markers, etc. And other hotspots were found at that point. I had some on my armpit, axillary nodes here, which was an unusual disposition of tumour, I'm told, for a small intestinal net. They also found a thyroid lesion, which I'll talk about more later. And both my markers, chromogranin A and 5-HIAA, were elevated. I went on to have 3 surgeries. The first one was to remove the primary and also unusually to strip out some of that fibrosis, which had fused my aorta and IVC together, which I'm told was quite dangerous. 5 months after that, I had a liver resection. And then another 9 months after that, I had the lymph nodes removed that were under my armpit and the clavicle. Interestingly, the armpit nodes tested positive, but the clavicle nodes tested negative. I've been on lanreotide since December 2010, so I'm coming up for nearly 10 years, and I had my 130th injection on the 28th of October last week. I unfortunately developed lung blood clots or pulmonary emboli a few months after my main surgery, my big surgery as I call it, and I'm still on blood thinners today. My thyroid lesion started to grow, and the biopsy did in 2016, but the biopsies were inconclusive for NET or for anything really. But my thyroid bloods were abnormal, and I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, and I take some tablets for that, and everything's fine now. I had my first gallium-68 PET scan in 2018, and that added my first bone tumour to my NET CV, and confirmed all the other things that they already knew about, plus a few extra things, which are not really bothering me. My clavicle lymph node area still lights up, and my thyroid still lights up, but I suspect that's physiological uptake. The main reason I got that scan is to check on this retroperitoneal fibrosis, which was reported in a CT scan that same year as being quite close and almost occluding one of my ureters. That's still being watched, and I may need to get that seen to one day, probably surgery. Apart from that, I'm okay, but that experience did make me want to learn a bit more about neuroendocrine cancer. And so here we go on that. First thing is, if you want to become an expert, even just your own expert, that context is really important when you're talking about neuroendocrine neoplasms, which is a word that we're starting to use a bit more now. And when you look at any technical overview of neuroendocrine neoplasms, then you see this statement here. And I've highlighted the key word, heterogeneous, because these tumors can be indolent all the way through to highly aggressive, and there's all sorts of different types and situations, and you've really got to get a grip of the terminology that is in use to be able to be understood and also to understand others. And it's a big word, and I'm not even sure that I'm saying it properly, but it's the easy patient definition is it's comprised of many types, and those of you who know a bit about the disease will know exactly where I'm coming from. But you need to be an expert, you really need to expand the context of the word heterogeneous, because it's not just the fact that some are slow growing and some are fast growing. There's different types as well, and this is a disease which involves cells, and so it can appear more or less anywhere in the body. Some places more frequently than others. There's different grades, and that ties into the slow and fast. But if you're grade 3, the differentiation is now very important, whether something is well or poorly differentiated. And that's a really important point when you're talking to someone who's got a grade 3, or if you yourself has got a grade 3. You need to really know that bit of information to be able to become your own expert or talk to others with context. And stage, again, we have stage 1, we can have stage 4, and a lot of people do present at stage 4, but there's many people at lower stages. And of course, this is a disease that comes with hormonal syndromes. And so if someone can be functional, over-secreting a hormone, and there's many hormones, not just one, or they're non-functional. And I've added that other one in the end because it's quite important. A lot of people present with pre-existing comorbidities, which has nothing to do with NETs. And some of them develop new ones after diagnosis, which may be related to NETs in terms of perhaps a side effect of something. And these are not mutually exclusive. So you can have someone with a high grade and a low stage, and someone with a low grade and a high stage. In fact, low grade, high stage is very common in this disease, which is something different from a lot of other cancers. So first of all, if you want to become an expert, you need to actually be an expert about yourself. And one of the ways of doing that is most people are going to have some form of specialist, and it's so much better if you're seeing a neuroendocrine specialist and who works as part of a neuroendocrine multidisciplinary team. Because you actually learn from people who have got vast experience in dealing with this disease. And I always pay strict attention to those guys when they speak to me. But you also learn from what they write about. So, and that's one way that you can advocate for yourself, because you need to completely understand your baseline diagnosis, and you need to understand what it all means. And then you need to track it going forward, because that helps with your learning too. You need to understand why things may have changed in your situation, why you've got different things going on. And the way to do that is to get copies of reports. Now, I know a lot of people say to me, I don't seem to get reports, but you need to ask for them, and you're entitled to see them. And then you also need to read and learn what they actually mean. And the only way to do that is to ask questions, and never be afraid of appearing foolish, because no question is foolish in cancer, and in particular, neuroendocrine neoplasms. And don't be afraid of healthcare professionals. Don't have that stiff upper lip where you just accept everything. You've got to ask questions. And do you know what? My experience says that doctors want you to ask questions, and they will never consider any of your questions to be foolish or stupid in any way at all. But you need to think about the questions that you do have for them. And I would suggest that you also add quality of life into some of your questions, and not just tumor and hormone markers, which is generally what is discussed along with scans and stuff like that. Because that actually broadens your knowledge about the effects of the cancer, and helps you live better with the condition and helps you to ask much better formed questions. But you're already an expert, because while doctors might be the experts in cancer, you are the expert in how cancer has affected you, and you should value that experience. And, you know, if you want to be an expert, even your own expert, just for yourself, but particularly if you want to help other people using that expertise, then you really need to go online. We do live in a digital world, and we've seen this year in 2020 how important being able to be online actually is. Paper information is fine, but as soon as it's printed, it's out of date. And so you can't really rely on it too much. Being online is being current, and there's always buts in social media and in cancer. And so you have to be aware of those buts. The internet is really powerful, but also it's contextually dangerous. And you know, you're going to speak to a lot of patients. You might be presenting as an expert patient, and you've got to be careful not to label people with your situation, because everybody's going to be different. Even if they have the same type of net, they're going to be different situations. So it's best not to try to compare everyone else to you. And I mentioned at the beginning the word heterogeneous. And you know, you need to think heterogeneity when you're talking about neuroendocrine neoplasms, because everybody's going to have a different story. The internet is powerful, that's for sure, but it can also be life-threateningly dangerous. And you know, Cancer Research done a study into the internet and cancer, and they found that if you Google cancer therapy, it comes up with 330 million hits on things to look at. And they also said that most of them are not conventional treatment or scientifically proven treatment. Ergo, the vast majority of cancer therapy searches comes to alternative therapy, which can be dangerous to a lot of people. So I advise you to be careful with what you find online. And we're going to talk about that in a bit more now. Searching on the internet, which is a thing that people do every day, brings up everything, good and bad. And as I've just explained, there's more bad out there than good when it comes to healthcare information. That's something that you need to be very aware about. I've written 4 articles about this, and that's a picture that I've displayed here. It's from part 1, and there's part 2, 3, and 4. And you know, you could ask me for those, or you can search and you will find them. And it's worth reading that if you want to be serious about getting more involved online and becoming an advocate, or just becoming a more informed patient. So Kathy asked me today to talk about how to become your own expert. It's a question I've been asked before, because people out there will know me as a blogger. I've been doing it since 2014. I didn't mean to, I didn't know I was going to be doing this today where I am now. It was only ever a short-term thing when I started, but I kind of continued on. I won an award for a company called, an advocate organization called Weagle Health. They're a US-based patient advocate organization with over 100,000 patient leaders on there, all different conditions. So it was quite good to give neuroendocrine cancer some exposure by winning the blog award in 2018. And just shortly after that, my blog hit 1 million hits, which I was completely over the moon with, completely astonished about. And so they said to me, can you write us an article, giving us 10 tips for how to do what you've just done? And it was a bit of a challenge, because I'm not actually sure how I did it. And but I'm going to talk about that a bit more now. And in fact, there's my statement there. You know, I'm not even sure how I managed it. But one thing I know what I did was actually work pretty hard to get it to be what it is today, and even then back in 2018. And I'm still improving it all the time, still working just as hard. So I'll say that to you now. You know, you could end up working quite hard becoming a patient expert, but it all depends on your scope. And the first thing that most people do is they generate their own story about their diagnosis and how it happened and what led to it, and what happened at your actual diagnosis, and then what happened immediately after, and how are you today, kind of thing. And so I did that, and I initially sent it out via my blog, and people started to read it, and then people wanted to know more, and it went on from there. So if you haven't done a story yet, or if you've got one, I would suggest that you publish it somewhere or ask someone to publish it. There are plenty of people out there who will do it. You can ask me who to send it to. You can send it to me if you want. I'm a Patients Included accredited website. But in UK, I would definitely send it to Neuroendocrine Cancer UK as part of their hashtag Faces of NETs campaign, which is really good. It's great that we can talk about human beings and their stories of their diagnosis and going forward. So that's really a really powerful tool, is a patient story. And there's plenty of educational support out there to take that patient story further. And, we've already talked about some of these people. First of all, your clinical there's a clinical source there that in your multidisciplinary team or your specialist that you see all the time. And you'll see other specialists. If you go for a scan, you meet radiology people. If you go for an interventional procedure, you'll meet an interventional radiologist, and so on and so on. So you meet more than just your specialist, and you always listen to what they have to say, and you learn from them. And you can take that away, and it becomes part of your own education and the ability to educate others from informed people. There's advocates, and I like to think of myself as an advocate, and I advocate at the international level. There's advocates, there's also patient foundations such as Neuroendocrine Cancer UK, and there's plenty of others. Specialists also advocate for patients all the time. I see them at conferences and they plug for the patients all the time. And peers, and what I mean by that is other patients or caregivers or carers, as we say in the UK. But also it means support groups. I mean, thousands of people in my support group. There's about 5,500 people in my support group. And I've used the term lurk to learn there. And about a third of people, so, about between 1,500 and 2,000 people, never post in my support group. They're there, they just love reading other people's experiences so that they can help themselves, basically. And that's absolutely fine with me. And finally, but not least, is conferences. And this is where I first started to learn. I went to Neuroendocrine Cancer UK, or NET Patient Foundation, as they were back in 2012. I went to one of their conferences somewhere in the middle of England, and I was completely blown away by things that I didn't know about. We had NET specialists talking there. We had Kathy, who's a nurse, talking as well. And we had dietitians there. We had Tara Wyan there, who's the top dietitian. And I just couldn't believe the amount of detail and education and learning I was getting from attending this conference. And of course, I met some other patients as well, which is really cool. And so I advise you, if you get a chance to attend a conference, is to do that. And there's lots of virtual stuff coming up now. And there's this talk I'm doing now is going to appear at a virtual conference. So the 10 tips that I had to sit down and think about when I was asked by Regal Health to write this article, and then asked. So it's made this easier for when Kathy asked me to write about it. I've already done this for another organisation, but I really had to think about these 10 tips because I wasn't sure how I actually did it, and I had to go back through all my social media and see what happened and when it happened and what changed and why did it change, and I've come up with these tips, and basically you have to get, if you want to go online, which you really need to do to become an expert, you have to get some apps, and these apps will allow you to search things, and they will also allow you to set alerts and get information pushed to you. And I do a mixture of both. I sit in my little office and I get things sent to me that I've set up alerts for. And that's how I find out a lot of useful information. And I don't get alerts from, sites that don't know about nets. I get alerts mainly from established neuroendocrine cancer sites, experts. The other thing that I would say to you is this doesn't happen overnight. This took me a long time to get to tip number 10. I'm talking a couple of years. I suppose if you put a lot of work into it, you can do it quicker. But I was developing it all the time and changing and adapting. Number 2 is tied into what I've just been saying. You need to set a routine. I was kind of going in ad hoc, and it can actually become a bit of a job. And that's what my wife actually calls it when I'm doing it. So it all ties into exactly how much you want to do. And for that, you need to find yourself a brand if you want to establish yourself online. And you need to have a scope of what it is you want to do. You want to learn about just your own type, or every type, or just about a particular type of therapy that you might be thinking of you're going to be getting in a couple of years or something like that. If you want to go online, you could either go online yourself, or you can establish yourself on a Twitter account as a name or something else, or a Facebook page, etc., etc. And there's all sorts of other places you can go, but those are the 2 main ones. You need to find the sources. Some are fairly obvious. Many need some digging to find. I've got hundreds of sources, literally, and I trust most of them. Some of them I take with a pinch of salt, but you need apps and logons to find some of these sources. You need to study and understand those sources, and you need to monitor the output for a period of time before you say, well, that to me is a trusted site. And you need to focus on sites which are evidence-based, and so stay clear of those generic domain names there. I mean, fakesite.com and buymyproduct.com, through my experience, there are thousands of them out, perhaps millions of them out there, and the information that comes out of them in a healthcare context is fake, and a lot of them have got a product that they want you to buy, and it may not be the product that's going to make you feel better. In fact, it might make you feel worse, and so I would steer clear of those. Search engines such as Google, as I said earlier, they will bring up everything, good and bad. And it takes time to get your head around why some sites might be bad. And just, if you want to read more about this particular subject, you probably need to go and look at my internet articles, all 4 of them. You have a story to tell, and we mentioned that earlier. Patient stories are so powerful, and you might want to have a short version of that patient story, even if it's just your cancer type, etc., as part of your login profiles that you use on various social media, like on Twitter, etc. I find that people are more receptive to sharing stuff with you and sharing your stuff if your logon details, which are in the public domain, have a little bit of a story behind them. At least they know what you're on about, and they might feel some affinity to you. And the other 5, you need to really listen and learn from the sources, and again, look to learn. You may be in a group where you're just learning from people's experiences. You may register for a scientific website where you just read stuff but not contribute. And you need to grow. If you really want to, if you're enjoying what you're doing, becoming a patient expert, or a more informed patient, or an intelligent patient, whatever you want to call it, you may find that you want to market yourself so that you can pass on that experience to others. But to do that, you need to grow. You need to join other organizations, and that means exposing yourself and passing your details into the public domain. But, you need to pick your organizations carefully. And knowledge is not power. There's no point in going out and getting lots of information and then sort of keeping it to yourself. So you need to help others with the knowledge that you have, if you think it will help them. And be consistent. If you suddenly one day started to tweet about, alternative cures and stuff without an explanation why you've suddenly started to do that, people are going to be a bit worried about that. So try and be consistent about the aims and your own personal strategy. And finally, be you. I think people appreciate that when you're upfront and honest with them about what you are and what you're about. And there are pitfalls to becoming a patient expert. There are pitfalls to becoming quite active online. And some of them affect you as an individual, and some of them affect others. So, for example, when I started to use Google quite a lot to establish all my sources, you have to, really. I was starting to discover all sorts of things that were wrong about the internet, in that a lot of information is completely out of date, even, and still is today, within neuroendocrine cancer, within lots of cancers, I guess. And, I suddenly discovered that when I found prognostic information, which you go, when you're on the internet, you've all done it, you go from link to link to link to link to link to link to link. And I was reading this prognostic information, which told me that I should have been dead by now. And I sort of read it a few times, and I suddenly dug into it a bit more and found out it's quite an old paper. It was written by specialists, but it's a very old paper. And I found out that the data was presented as in one thing. So it was all the sort of more aggressive types mixed in. And so it kind of skewed the data. So that's just something to be aware of. So always check the dates on stuff before you get too worried. And another thing that I found is when you're looking at studying the various symptoms that people get, and of course you get them yourself sometimes, and you suddenly realize that these symptoms could be serious things, and oh my God, so you start to get a bit worried. So you have to be prepared to find things that might scare you. But the more you learn about how the internet works, and the more you learn about your disease, the less scared you become, because you can dismiss some of that is not applicable to you. On the other side, you come into contact more with healthcare professionals. And in my experience, most healthcare professionals online are really useful, really helpful. I follow a lot of doctors online, and they follow me, and we share each other's stuff. And that's really cool. Most of the stuff I search, most of the stuff that I share has got them in it anyway, so that's probably why they share it. But you do find occasionally that there's a bit of conflict, and I mostly hear this from other patients who they come back from an appointment with a doctor, and they said, "Oh, my doctor's told me to stop using Google because it's all wrong." And of course, that actually is not correct. The internet is powerful, providing you use it properly. But I completely get the fact that doctors or healthcare professionals in general might tell a patient not to Google certain things. And I was told not to Google my diagnosis, but I completely ignored that, as one does. But the top left picture on the screen here is amusing, and as you can tell by the wording, it's not from the UK. But it's an interesting point, because, and I guess that in an online connected digital world, that doctors probably do get fed up with people coming to them and said, "I've seen on the internet, blah, 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 blah." So, you have to really think about the questions that you're going to ask your doctor, and you may not necessarily want to mention to him that you got that from the internet, and then that keeps the peace. So there are pitfalls about that online. And I'm coming to near the end, you might be pleased to hear. but a little bit about me and how I got to where I am today. What I write about is mostly in my blog, but I do have Twitter and Facebook pages as well. You can see from my blog, I won an award. In fact, I've won 2 awards. Only one of them was for the blog. I'm approaching 1.5 million views. I will do that by Christmas. And my public pages, the first one on there is just crept over 10,000 followers. And my private group has 5,500 people in it from across the world. I advocate on an international basis, and it seems to work fine. And I'm quite active on Twitter as well, with 2 accounts there. And it's worth mentioning to you, if you really want to get more involved online and become more of an expert, is that Twitter and Facebook are completely different things. What you'll find on Facebook mainly is more patients, which is absolutely fine. It's a popular app and most people have got that, so it's ideal for patients. When you go to Twitter, you'll find more healthcare professionals, which is why Twitter is a very lucrative source of quality information on many types of cancers, but you get a lot of quality information on neuroendocrine cancer. And if you want me to tell you who to follow on Twitter, I'm perfectly happy to do that. Just make contact with me through my normal channels. And I get a lot of my information from Twitter accounts on the new things that I wasn't quite aware was happening. A lot of it comes from there. So that's it. Thanks for the opportunity to talk today. I much appreciate Kathy asking me to do this talk. Now go be your own expert and contact me if you need any more information. Thank you.